Okay, good morning, students. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, in today's session, we will see how we can connect a MongoDB server with Node.js or Express.js. So, in the last practical session, we had discussed how we can create an API which will perform CURD operation, creating, updating, retrieving, and deleting. But we did that on JSON object. We created one .js file where we put some objects by default and we tried to manipulate those. In today's, we will see how we can go with a MongoDB. So Reddy sir has already, I think, uh, taught you the MongoDB in BDA. So we will just refresh few things. So it's a free open source NoSQL database management system. So in MongoDB, it saves your data in the form of JSON, right? So unlike a relational databases, we use a NoSQL based database. So we have MongoDB as one of the NoSQL database. We have few from Google, AWS as well, big table, right? So in MongoDB, again we say it's a database. Under a database, we have collections. So collections is similar to the tables in SQL, and documents is similar to tuple or records or rows in SQL based databases. So MongoDB official website, if you visit, you can download from this mongodb.com. It will automatically prompt you the download. Okay, so you have to just open an account and you will be able to download it. So in today's session, we will see how we can install it, then how we can make a connection from our Express.js program to MongoDB as well. And we will also try to perform the CURD operations on some documents. So instead of wasting a time on theories, let's straight away go with the practicals, right? So practical implementation. So I will be creating one project. Let it be in a D drive. Let's call it as 13. So I have created a folder. Now then I will just open my studio. So it's an empty folder right now. No files, no folders till now. So let's open a terminal. So first thing to have in our Express program is we have to initialize the npm. I say -y to say yes to all the default values. Otherwise, I have to keep on pressing enter. It will create a package.json file, as you can see. Now, why we need this file is when it's time to migrate your program or project from one server to another, you don't need to install the dependencies manually on the migrated one. So this file helps us to do that on its own. So this is the default contents that we have accepted. Now next is we have to install the Express in it. We do not have any section with a name dependency in package.json, but once we installed Express, one dependency section is created, and under that Express is mentioned, right? So when we migrate this dependency up to 4.7.2 version, anything can work. So that can be used. Then whenever we will make any changes, we don't need to restart it manually. So we will go with a node-mon module, which will do that job for us. So node-mon will be very efficient module when we are working on development servers, because when we will push our codes on productions, we hardly reboots or restarts a server once or twice in a year or 2 years, right? So now node-mon is also added, as you can see. Then let's try to install the MongoDB. So npm I stand for install and MongoDB. It's a NoSQL based database. This dependency is also added. Now you might have learned that in MongoDB, if you create the collections, see there is no terminology like schema, validations, constraints in MongoDB. So it is very flexible. Do we can create as many as fields as we want at any moment of time. There is no restriction on the types of fields. Like in SQL, we have a column roll number. If we have, then it should only have a number. So that constraint we can put or attach to the columns, what type of value that column will have. But in MongoDB, there is no restriction for any of the fields. Like uh, we want some columns to have not null values, primary keys, uniqueness, some default values. Then MongoDB does not have the functionality or a provision on its own. To do that, there is one another library or a module that called as Mongoose that will help us to create a schema to validate the values before entering or pushing it into a MongoDB. So I will just also install that Mongoose library, and the same library is also used to make the database connection. Right, so Mongoose library is pretty useful to create a schemas to push the values into MongoDB to have some validations and constraints. So as you can see now in under a dependency section, we have installed first Express, then Mongoose and node-mon. Now node-mon, we don't need to manually restart it. So I will just add few scripts here. So start node index. Suppose index is my entry point for the execution of the project. Under a dev environment, that is a development, go on restarting the node-mon for the index. Right. So we have changed, we have added these two lines. Let's start with index.js file. It's empty. So let's run now. npm run dev. We have not written anything, but you can see it has started executing the index.js file. Right. So the file index.js is empty. So we will move directly towards creating the Express servers, right? So instead of spending a lot of time on Node.js, what we will do, it will be very useful if you go with the Express ones. So let's try to create the reference of Express from the installed one. So it will have a reference, then we have to instantiate it. So const app Express. So the application will have the instance of app. Then make that application to listen to some port number let's say 8080, and once it is started, just have some callback function which will log the data in a server's terminal. Server started at 8080. You can see we got server started message in terminal, right? So till now, this one we already covered. We already had a session on Express as well in theory and practical also. So this is, I hope every one of you are familiar now. Okay, so let's move further. So what we will do, we will divide our today's session into two parts. One uh, thing that we have to clear, I want to explain first is router, and then I will go for the MongoDB connection. So what is a router or why we need it? So suppose I want to define a get HTTP request method. Whenever there is an incoming request for a get method for slash, okay, and then I will just have some response generated, response.send get method called, right? So this is how the get will have. Now let's say I have another get method, but it now this time it uses users. Let's say I have another which will have a post method for slash users, right? Then I will have, let's say, another one for slash users endpoint, but for delete method, right? So I can go on creating, I will go on creating such a kind of methods inside the same file, that is index.js. But if you have, if you are trying to develop an application which is large and complex and there are so many endpoints to manipulate, then instead of writing everything inside the same file index.js, you may have hundreds of files, right? And now you can see for the same endpoint, that is slash users, slash users, slash users, I can go with get, post, delete, patch, put, head, options methods, right? So this is the one endpoint. If I have another slash user slash id, right? So that will be very critical to maintain and update afterwards. So instead of writing all your incoming routes in a same file, that is index.js, what we will do, we will have one for the main domain, but whenever there is any incoming request for an endpoint, don't try to define the methods here, right? Don't try to define the methods here. What we will do, we will, what is the recommended is, you should create a new folder. Let's say the name is router, and under this folder, all your routes will be defined. So let me create one new file and let's call it as timscsc.js. So what I'm trying to do here is, so what I will do here is, instead of writing everything in a index.js, I will create a route here, and here also I will have the express, and then I will try to create one route, let's say dims csc router, one object, and which will be the router. So I'm using here function router, right, from express module. So what it says, if I scroll the mouse, it will allow us to create the methods for the same endpoint, different methods. We can define it inside this. So let's say how. So dims router dot get. So whenever I have a slash, execute this callback, send dot respond dot send DIMS CSE router called get method called. So I've just defined one route here for a get incoming get HTTP request inside a router, right? Then to make this router available for another JS file as well, we have to export it. Right, so I have exported it. Now you have to go to index.js file, and now whenever there is any incoming request, so app.use, any incoming request for slash dimscse, forward those to dimscse router. Forward it to the dimscse router. So we also have to include it here, const dims CSE router equals to require and the path where that .js file resides. So it is inside a router folder and inside dims. Right. So okay, it's already been defined. Okay, no issue. So you can see this has been already done. So what will happen? We are whenever there is a incoming request for the root domain, this method will be called. But whenever the endpoint is slash dimscse, the control or the incoming request will be forwarded to this router. Then under this router, we have just written slash. What does it mean? Whenever there is incoming request for this root domains, this endpoint slash dimscse, this get method will be called. So let's check. You can see get method called localhost colon 8080. So what it has executed? This get method called. But if I append this dimscse to the URL, you can see dimscse router get method call. Right. So if you go with another methods like post, delete, patch, put on this same endpoint, that is slash dimscse, those all requests will be forwarded to this router. So if you have 10 endpoints, you will have 10 routers here. And every application or the main application will use it for different endpoints. Right. So this is very handy. Right. So instead of putting every route for the same entry GS file, go on creating different routers for the endpoints, and that will handle all types of incoming HTTP methods requests. I hope it is clear, right? So if I again go with post method, let's say, and I will just change it from get to post, right? So again, whenever I will make a post for the endpoint slash dimscse, again that request will be forwarded to this router. It will check, yes, there is a request for post, and this method will be called. Let's check this out. Now to make a post request, I'm going to use a Postman API software, because otherwise I have to create a front end. I have to have a form, and clicking on a button will make a method post. Right, so we use form action equals to something and method equals to post. So instead of writing a front end, I'm using a Postman to check the backend or the API. I will just use the same URL. I'm making a GET request. Let's send it. So you can see router GET method is called. If I just change to post, you can see now the post method is called. But in a router, we have not defined for delete. So if I send it, it means it's giving us back the error message, right? So we have not defined it. So this is what the router does. I hope it is clear. Okay. Any doubt, guys, till now regarding routers?
No, sir.
Okay. So let's go to the index.js and let's go with the database connection now. So we have just installed a MongoDB and a library Mongoose. So the library Mongoose will help us to make a connection, to create a schema, to validate the values before entering those into the MongoDB databases, right? So let's go and see how we can make a connection. So on the corporate infra, we have line of servers. We have like a set of database servers. We have set of Express servers. We have set of Angular servers, application servers, development servers, production servers, right? So those all will be in the same network. So it may happen your Express and database may be residing on the same one, or it may be on two different machines, but will be in the same network, right? So this library will help us to do that, even though not only MongoDB, if you go with a MySQL, Cassandra, MariaDB, or any supporting libraries, if you see Express databases, official documentation, to which kind different types of databases we can integrate with Express. So you can see there are bunch of database systems. One that we will be using is MongoDB. If you want to use MySQL, you can still go and use it to have the database stored in MySQL, and that you can manipulate through Express as well. Now, as our subject is mean, so in today's session, we will not use Angular, but we will go and use Node, Express, and Mongo as well. So to use a Mongo, we have to just get a reference of a Mongoose library, right? So I will just go and make it required. Reference is created. Once it is created, let's go after the last statement. You can define anywhere. Let's have a URL where the database is running. So the protocol where the MongoDB can be accessed is MongoDB:// localhost slash the name of the database. Let's say DIMS CSCDB. So this is the database name to which I want to connect. So I'm using a MongoDB. I have already installed it in my current folder, in my current project. So the protocol here I'm using is MongoDB on localhost on the same machine I'm running it. If it is on some another machine, you have to give the IP address or the name of that host and the name of the database to which it is created. Right now, this database does not exist. Let's say what happens next. Then let's use the Mongoose library to make the connection. So connect to the specified URL. Right. So Mongoose, use the Mongoose library to connect to the specific database server. Now, as this library has been updated from last so many years, as it's a free and open source, we have to make sure that this the new parser. Right. So new parser is means what? There are some methods which are deprecated, and it will show us some error message says warning. So if I don't want it, just use this new user URL parser. So even though the URLs are encoded, this library will take care of it. So don't use the deprecated parsers, use the new one. So for that, I'm using this object as a second parameter. And whenever it is successful, the connection will be done. Then once the connection is done, I want to have the object on which the further communication will take place. So let's say con, and I'm just trying to get a reference of that connection. So mongoose dot connection. So first try to connect. Once it is connected, whatever the connection is done, get an object for my further processing. Now on a con, there is a method on. What does it mean? Whenever the connection is on and the reply and the connection is open. So open, have this callback method. If there are some errors, then just display or throw those errors. If not, I will just log some detail to the console just to check it is connected. So whenever the incoming connection is open, I will just see a database connected message in its user's terminal, server's terminal. And you can see here in a terminal of a server, I got a message, database connected. So whatever code we have written here for connectivity, it's working fine. So let's see one more time what we did. We have included a model, Mongoose library. Then by using that, I have just defined one constant URL where your database is running. Then try to make a connection. Don't use the deprecated parser, use the new one. Get me the created connection object reference. And whenever the connection is open, and if something goes wrong, throw that error. Otherwise, just log a message, database connected. So database connection is done. So it's a NoSQL. So we know we don't have tables in NoSQL, but in MongoDB, it's called collections, right? So tables synonymous in Mongo is collections, and tuple synonymous is documents. And documents are saved in the form of JSON file on the hard disk. It's saved as a JSON. Now let's move forward. Unlike MySQL or RDBMS, we don't have any restrictions. We cannot define any schema in Mongo. But that Mongoose library will definitely help us to create a schema. So to create a schema, what I will do, I will just to separate the codes from one another and to follow the MVC architecture, model view controller, I will create a new folder. Let's make it a model. So where the schema will be defined. So if you have multiple collections, all those collection schema you can put under a same folder. So the sorting and the utilization will be very easy. So I have created one folder. Let's create one new file here. Let's call it as dimscsc.js. Right. So why I'm creating it under a model, because this model we know it is a data and how we can access it. So to have the schema defined, I will create one new file. So this will be the collection name dimscsc. Let's define a library mongoose. Let's have the reference here as well. Okay, then let's try to create a schema dimscsc schema new mongoose dot schema. I want to create a new schema and what different fields it has, right? So let's say it has name. So name I want means it's a column name, or here in Mongo we call it as fields. So name, then what type of field it is. It is of type string. Is it required? Yes, I want to make it required. So required true. This is my first field. Let's have a second field. Let's call it as name, then email. I will just write the same thing. It's again of type string and it is required. Then let's have the third field, college name. Again, this is of type string, but here I will not make this field required. I want it to have a default value as a DIMS. What will happen if from the front end the request comes in, and if it does not have a college name, it will not throw any error message, but for that document it will have a default value DIMS, right? So we have just defined one schema. We have included a Mongoose library. We have given some name to the schema. I want to create a new schema. So mongoose.schema and the type of fields, number of fields and its type and whether they are required or default. Once the schema is ready, then we have to export that as well to use it in some another JS of the same project. So mongoose dot model, export that as a model and further refer it as dims csc. Okay, and export this schema, whatever schema we have defined, export this, and the nickname that we are giving here is dims csc. So we are exporting this model so that the js files which are present in the project, that will have use of it, right? Then let's go to router dims csc. Okay, a router DMS CSC, and whenever there is an incoming request, okay, for the endpoint slash DMS CSC, it will retrieve all the records, all the collections, sorry, all the documents from that schema. So this is the slash. Let me remove everything. It should read all the documents from MongoDB collection and it should return it back as a response. So let's see how we can do that. So let's have a try block and catch as well if there are some errors. Now, one thing that we saw is it may happen your database servers and Express servers are running on two different machines. And there may be some latency, there may be some delay in having a data from the database. So to make our application asynchronous, so this callback method, by default it will be asynchronous. To make it async, because whenever the data is available, you just wait for it. So I have made that callback as asynchronous. So non-blocking way. Error. If there is something goes wrong, then just send that in the response.send error. If not, let's try to retrieve everything. So, and I will use a method await. So wait until the data is retrieved from the database. I have to use here that model as well. So dims csc, that model I'm using, require where it is present dot slash model slash dims csc. So whatever model we have created, I'm just trying to include it here. So await until dims csc dot find. So this find method will find all the collections and it will send it back. So let's send it back. Response dot send, or let's send it as in the form of JSON d1. So what this function will do, get all the collections by using find method, wait until the response is ready. Once it is ready, save it in a d1 object, and whatever the d1 has, send it as a response in the form of JSON. Let's move to the here postman. Let's make a get request and let's send it. And you see we got empty square brackets. Now why we got this? Because right now there are no documents. It's empty. The collection is empty. So that's why this is empty square brackets we have retrieved. Even if I try this inside a browser URL, so you see it's still a empty square brackets, right? So our collection is empty. That's why it's happening. So what we will do now? we will try to post, we will try to create a new collect document inside a collection. So whenever there is a post request, again we have to make the callback async. Then in a post one, whatever the incoming HTTP request comes, it will have a JSON body which will have a name, email, and college name inside it. We have to read it here inside a post, and we have to save it in MongoDB. Right. So let's say how we can do that. So inside a post method, let's try to create a new object constant. Let's call it as new dims CSE equals to new dims CSE, whatever the model we have defined a model here, and we have been referring here as dims CSE C capital. So create a new dims CSE. For that, the name should be taken from the incoming request, the content inside a body dot name. Same thing I will do for email as well. So email will also be present inside a incoming request inside a body, and then college name as well. So college name equals to request dot body dot college name. So what we did here is, get in a incoming request body, we will pass name, email, and college name. We are trying to create a new object of the model, that is dims CSE, and it will have the values from the incoming request. Right. So there are some errors. Okay, I have to use here colon. Right. Now once the object is created, let's try to save it. If for saving there are some errors, catch that error and just throw it or send it as a response. Okay, so if it works in a try, we have to write const d1, let's say, whatever the new object is, that is new dims CSE dot save. So save is inside a MongoDB, but this save will again we have to write with await. Why? Because your database server may be busy until and unless the value is saved in a database server. Don't pass the control to the next statements. And whatever is returned back, I'm trying to save it in a D1 object. You can take any name. Once it is been saved, just let's send a response in a JSON that D1. Whatever the object is inserted, just send it in a response. Right. So we have written a post method. It's a asynchronous callback. I'm trying to create a new model object. I'm initializing the fields from the incoming body. I'm trying to insert it by using a dot save method. And I'm using await as well because it's a database connection. Whenever the data is inserted, then and then only move forward, and in a response send that object back to the client. So let's go to the post one and let's try to insert. So to this endpoint, I will make a post request. Under header, as it's an incoming request, I have to set the type, content type as JSON. Inside a body, let's pass the JSON. First name, let's pass ABC. Second field, email, abc@gmail.com. Now college name we made in a model as if not given, it will have a default value dims. So we don't need to give here if we want this request or this document to have the default value for college name. So let's send the request. So it's sending to DMS CSC when we are not getting back our response. So maybe there is something wrong with the server. So you can see there is some error. Cannot read property name of undefined. Now what does it mean? This statement has thrown an error. See, in your index.js file, we have to make sure that it uses the parser because it's a incoming request, HTTP request that is coming. It's a incoming one, and we have to make sure application uses a JSON body parser. So app.use express.json. So use a JSON parser for incoming HTTP requests. Otherwise, your Express web application will not be able to read the fields that are coming from incoming HTTP. Now let's try to send, and you see in a response we got the inserted record. So name is taken ABC, the mail ID, the default value for the college name, and like MongoDB does, every document will have one unique ID for identification that will be generated automatically by the MongoDB and the default version. So underscore ID is a default ID. Let's try to insert one more. So now I will just change to PQR, and this time I will also send the college name. Let's say JNEC. Right. So I don't want a default value as DIMS for this record. So I'm giving the college name as well. Let me send it, and you can see the college name it has taken. Now let me make a GET request. I want to retrieve all the records from the database. So I'm making a GET. Let's send it. And you can see in the response, there are two objects. There are two objects. You can see it has been inserted. Now to check it with a MongoDB database, you might have heard there is a MongoDB compass. So I will just take a help of this tool to see whether it has been installed or not, whether the data is inserted or not. So I'm just downloading it. Okay, it's and let's open a folder where that zip file is opened. Okay, MongoDB. Let me try one more time. Download. Okay, open folder. Okay, so I have extracted it as well as in D. So I will go to D. MongoDB Compass. Yes, this is the installer. I will just try to open the application now. It's a simple setup like any another application in Windows. We just need to view it. You can see the MongoDB Compass is used. Let's use the same URL that we have used inside Express. The same URL I'm using and connect. So you can see the Compass has connected to the local host. So how many databases it has? Right now we have created DIMS CSCDB. So I'm just click here. It has one collection DIMS CSC. It has two documents inside it. Let's go and explore. So these are the two objects. Two documents are present. The same, the one that we have posted, we have created by using post one. Let me try to insert one new as well. So I will just use the post one. I'm making a post request. Let's try to insert one new CSC, CSC, and let's say the default name is CSMSS. I'm making a send, and if I get the record inserted with the object ID means it has been reinstalled. Let's check with the compass. I'm refreshing, and you can see now there are 3 records. If I delete one, let me delete JNEC record. Now I have 2, and I will make a GET request to retrieve everything. You see I have 2 records. There is no record with a JNEC as a college name now. So our program, our application is now able to make manipulations. So this is how the post can work. But what if I want to have a record for a particular ID? So it says error message because we have not defined a get path for this. So let's try to do that. What if the ID is given? So it's a get request. So I will just copy this same code. Now for after slash, a user is giving ID. Then here I will just use a new method find by ID. Whatever the ID user has given by that ID, request.params. Now ID is given in the URL, so that's why I'm using request.params. If it is in a body, I would have used request.body and ID. So whomsoever is matching, just get the record of that user only and send it back. So let's see now. Let's make a send, and you can see only one user is extracted. If I just remove that ID and I want to get all the documents, you see it's having 2. Let me have the second ID now. So only that documents ID who's matching with the URL is been retrieved. If I give something else and if I send it, it will send the error message because that ID is not matching, right? So in this case, the catch is playing a role. So what I will do, instead of giving a whole error message, I will just write error in request. Okay, so this will be retrieved. That message will be retrieved. So it's up to you whether you want to have a generalized error message or specific one. Right. So this is how you can retrieve it. We have seen the post as well. Let's try to go with a delete. How we can delete it from the API. So to delete it, let's again use a DNS CSE router dot incoming request will be for delete or slash, and let's say we also have ID. It should be the async request. Now I will just copy everything from this one. Get the ID, find the method, find by ID. Now, once it has been found, we don't want that document to be present. It should be deleted. So what I will do, const, and let's call it as deleted document. Any name you can give. Wait until the document is deleted. Which document I want to delete? Now here the D1. So D1 dot remove. Wait until this document is deleted. Once it is deleted, get the reference, and here send it back as a response. Whatever the document is deleted, send it back as a response. If something goes wrong, still we have the error message. So let's go back. I will just fetch all the documents that are present. So right now we have 2 documents, as you can see. Suppose I want to delete this document. I will just pass here the ID, and instead of get, I will make a delete method, and let's send it. So I'm retrieving it back. But if I now try to get the same document, I will see a null response because that document no more exists. Even if you go with a compass and refresh, now that record no more exists in the MongoDB. So delete is also working fine. Right. So let me make a post request. Let me have multiple records here. CSE, let's then have mechanical, and I don't want a college name. Let it take the default value, and the record is inserted with the default value, right? So if I make a get, I have total 3 objects. 2 we have inserted right now. If I go with a compass and refresh, you see all those 3 documents are still existing. Now we have seen retrieving all the documents, right? Retrieving a document whose ID is mentioned, deleting or creating a new one, deleting whose ID is mentioned. Now let's try to update. So dims router dot patch, or the root domain whose ID is matching. So ID is given in the incoming URL, then async response. Right. Then whomsoever ID is present, get, let me copy everything here, get that ID. Now we don't want to remove it. Get that ID, then d1 dot, its name should be changed if it is given in the incoming request. So request dot body dot name. If it is not given, then what? Right, so it will have undefined. So to have it, we don't want it to have undefined value. If it is not mentioned, it should keep its original value of a name. So we will use a ternary operator here, question mark. If it is given, change it to that. If not given, keep the original name as it is. So this is how the ternary operator works. If it is given, if it exists, replace it with this. If this does not exist, keep the original name as it is. I will just do the same thing for email. As well as for college name. Right. So college name, and then let's have const updated document as one variable. Await, wait till the changes are happening in the database. d1 dot save. Same method that we have used to create save, and in a response it should send it that updated record to the user back. Right, so what we did, if the incoming request has id, get that record document, make the changes whatever given in the incoming bodies, save it in the database, and retrieve the updated record back. So let's see whether it works. So let me do this for this id. I'm making a get request. Okay, there is some error. Let me have a get. Let me take this id. You can see now for this id 39739, the name is ABC and the mail is that. Suppose I just want to change the name, so I will not give email. Suppose from mechanical I want to change it to civil. So the previous name is ABC, the mail ID is abc@gmail.com. I just want to change the name. Mail ID should be same, college name should also be same, and the ID is 739. So let's make a patch request. For this ID, I'm mentioning only name because this should be the updated value. Let's send it, and you can see now the ID is 739, the name is civil, and email is same, college name is same, only the name is changed. If I go with the compass 739, this name is ABC. Let me refresh, and you can see that has been updated. Not only name, suppose I also want to change the mail ID. civil at ditms.org, and also I suppose I want to change the college name as well. So default it is abc at gmail. DMS I want to change all three values. I'm making a patch request. Let's send it, and you can see it is been changed and the updated record is also fetched back. If I go here, and you can observe these three values, if I make a refresh, you can see the document is updated. Right. So this is how we can make things possible in Express. We have created a separate folders, router and model. Whatever the routes you have, whatever different endpoints you have, instead of defining all the routes in the same file, we will go on defining the routers in different files for easy accessing. The schema is defined in a model part. So on that model, we can insert, update, delete, and retrieve things. So this is how we have created a CURD, Express.js, and MongoDB application. Any doubt, guys? Any question?
Awesome.
Okay, that's it for today's. Then one last theory session, if possible, we'll take, where we will also have Angular front end, which will be the final full-fledged application using Mean. Today we have covered Express, Node, and Mongo. Angular is still remaining. Then in the practical or also in theory, we will see how we can make those possible. Thanks for joining. See you in the next.